The coffee machine hissed angrily behind me, matching my mood as I wiped down the counter for the third time. The late afternoon sun filtered through the cafe's windows, casting long shadows across the polished floor. My fingers were raw from the harsh cleaning chemicals, and my back ached from the double shift I hadn't planned on working. But when Layla called in sick, what choice did I have? We immigrants stuck together. It was an unspoken rule. "Maya, order up," Stefano, the owner, barked from the kitchen. I tucked a loose strand of dark hair behind my ear, adjusted my name tag, and grabbed the tray of pastries. The small family-owned cafe in Boston's North End wasn't much, but it had become my sanctuary over the past 8 months since I'd fled Lebanon, a place where I could blend into the background, be invisible, just how I needed to be. The bell above the door chimed as I arranged the cannoli in the display case. I didn't look up immediately, another habit I'd developed. In my experience, making eye contact sometimes invited unwanted attention, but something changed in the atmosphere of the cafe, like the air had suddenly grown heavier. The usual chatter of customers dimmed. Even Stefano, who never shut up, fell silent. When I finally glanced toward the entrance, I first noticed the 2 men in dark suits who had entered ahead of someone else, their eyes scanning the room with mechanical precision. They moved with practiced coordination, one taking position near the door while the other stood by the window. Only then did I see him. He entered like he owned not just the cafe but the entire street. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than I made in 3 months. His dark hair was perfectly styled, not a strand out of place. But it was his eyes that caught me, piercing, calculating, the kind that saw everything and revealed nothing. The few customers in the cafe shrank into their seats. Stefano hurried out from behind the counter, wiping his hands nervously on his apron. "Mr. Conti, welcome. Your usual table is ready." Stefano's voice had climbed an octave higher. So this was Vincent Conti. I'd heard whispers about him since my first day. The Italian-American businessman who owned half the neighborhood, the man whose name people only spoke in hushed tones, the Mafia boss whose power extended far beyond Boston's city limits. I kept my head down, focusing on the display case, arranging and rearranging the pastries with trembling hands. The girl. His voice cut through the quiet cafe like velvet over steel. "Is she new?" My body froze. I could feel his gaze burning into my back. "Maya?" "No, sir. She's been with us for several months now. Excellent worker, very quiet." Stefano's words tumbled out rapidly. The sound was non-committal, but somehow threatening. I heard footsteps approaching, expensive shoes clicking against the tiled floor. My heart pounded so loudly I was certain everyone could hear it. "Coffee, please. Black." He was at the counter now, his cologne, something woodsy and expensive, enveloping me. I nodded, still not meeting his eyes, and turned to prepare his order. My hands trembled as I operated the espresso machine. Don't drop it. Don't spill it. Don't give him any reason to notice you more than he already has. When I placed the cup on the counter, I made the mistake of looking up. His eyes captured mine, dark and intense, and I couldn't look away. Something flashed across his face. Surprise, perhaps curiosity, before his expression settled back into cool indifference. "Thank you, Maya." My name in his mouth sounded different, almost intimate, and it sent an involuntary shiver down my spine. He left a $100 bill on the counter. "Keep the change." I watched as he walked to his table by the window, where one of his men pulled out a chair for him. The other remained standing, his back to the wall, eyes constantly scanning the room. Conti sat with his back to the corner, giving him a full view of the cafe and the street outside. I recognized the seating arrangement from my own hypervigilance. It was the position of someone who didn't trust the world not to attack. "Stop staring and get back to work!" Stefano hissed at me, snapping me out of my daze. For the next hour, I moved through the cafe like a ghost, serving other customers, cleaning tables, all while acutely aware of Vincent Conti's presence. Occasionally, I felt his gaze following me, but I never looked in his direction again. As closing time approached, the cafe emptied except for Conti and his men. Stefano had retreated to the kitchen, leaving me alone at the front. I wiped down tables as far from them as possible, counting the minutes until I could leave. The bell chimed again, and a young man burst in, breathless and disheveled. His eyes were wild with panic as they darted around the room, finally landing on me. "Maya!" he cried out. My blood turned to ice. Fahad. My cousin's boyfriend from Lebanon. What was he doing here? "You have to help me," he said in Arabic, rushing toward me. "They're after me. Your cousin Zara. They took her." "They said if I don't." "Fahad." I cut him off, also in Arabic, aware of Conti's sudden attention. "Lower your voice. What are you talking about? How did you find me? Your mother told me where you work. I didn't know where else to go. They're saying I stole from them, but I didn't. They took Zara as collateral. They'll kill her if I don't return what they think I took." My mind raced. Fahad had always been involved with the wrong people. It was part of why I'd left Lebanon, to escape the trouble that seemed to follow my family. "You need to leave," I whispered urgently. "Now. I finish in 20 minutes. Wait for me at the station." But it was too late. The door opened again, and 3 men entered. They weren't Conti's men. These were different. Middle Eastern, like us. One of them I recognized from Beirut, Hassan, a loan shark with a reputation for brutality. "There you are, you little thief," Hassan said in Arabic, his eyes fixed on Fahad. Fahad grabbed my arm, pulling me in front of him like a shield. "Tell them I didn't steal anything. Tell them." Hassan's eyes narrowed as they shifted to me. "Maya Nassar. I didn't expect to find you here too. 2 birds with 1 stone." I felt Fahad's fingers digging into my arm. "What is he talking about?" I demanded. "Your cousin owes us money," Hassan said, switching to heavily accented English. "And now so do you. Your mother signed for your debt before you ran away." "That's a lie," I hissed. "I paid everything before I left." Hassan smiled coldly. "Interest accumulates quickly." I was vaguely aware that Conti and his men had risen from their table, watching the unfolding scene with calculated interest. "Please," I said to Hassan, my voice steady despite my fear. "This is not the place. Let's discuss this elsewhere." "No discussions," Hassan replied. "You both come with us now, or your cousin suffers." "I'm not going anywhere with you," I said, trying to pull away from Fahad, who still clutched my arm. Hassan nodded to his men, who moved toward us. In that moment, I did something I hadn't done since leaving Lebanon. I let my anger surface. Years of suppressed rage, fear, and helplessness boiled over. I spoke the words in Arabic, a curse my grandmother had taught me, ancient and vicious. The syllables felt hot on my tongue, like burning coals. It wasn't that I believed in curses, but the words carried the weight of my fury, my defiance. The cafe fell silent. Hassan's eyes widened slightly, then narrowed. "You dare!" A chair scraped against the floor. Vincent Conti stood, straightening his suit jacket with deliberate slowness. He said something to one of his men in Italian, then approached our group with unhurried steps. "Is there a problem here?" His voice was calm, almost pleasant, but there was steel beneath the surface. Hassan turned, clearly annoyed at the interruption, until recognition dawned on his face. He took a step back. "No problem, Mr. Conti, just collecting on a debt." Conti's gaze swept over Hassan, then his men, assessing and dismissing them in seconds before landing on me. His lips curved into something between a smile and a smirk. "That was quite a colorful phrase," he said to me. His eyes gleamed with amusement. "Repeat that," while looking into my eyes. The request caught me off guard. Had he understood what I'd said? Impossible. "I don't know what you mean," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "The curse," he clarified, stepping closer. "Say it again." I swallowed hard. Fahad's grip on my arm had loosened in shock. Hassan and his men remained frozen, uncertain how to proceed now that Conti had involved himself. "It was nothing," I said. Conti reached out, his fingers brushing against my chin, tilting my face upward until I had no choice but to meet his gaze. "I disagree. It was quite something." Time seemed to stand still as we looked at each other. There was curiosity in his eyes, and something else. A recognition, as though he'd found something unexpected and fascinating. I felt exposed, as if he could see through all my carefully constructed barriers. "Mr. Conti," Hassan started, breaking the spell. This is a private matter. Not anymore. Conti cut him off without looking away from me. You're in my neighborhood now, and it seems to me that you're harassing one of my favorite cafe's employees. Hassan's face hardened. With all due respect, these people owe— I don't care what you think they owe, Conti interrupted, his voice still pleasant, but his eyes cold as he finally turned to Hassan. What I care about is that you're disrupting my evening coffee. That makes it my business. He gestured to his men, who moved forward with silent efficiency. Now, you have two options. You can leave quietly and forget whatever grievance you think you have, or my associates can help you understand why that's your best choice. The threat hung in the air, clear and unmistakable. Hassan looked from Conti to his men, then back to me and Fahad. I could see him calculating his odds, weighing his options. This isn't over, he finally said to me in Arabic. Your debt remains. I think it is over, Conti replied, surprising me by responding in flawless Arabic. Unless you'd prefer to test my patience further? Hassan paled. Without another word, he motioned to his men, and they backed toward the door, disappearing into the growing darkness outside. The moment they left, Fahad released my arm and stumbled back. Maya, I'm sorry. I didn't think they'd follow me here. Enough, I said, suddenly exhausted. Just go. But Zahra, I'll figure something out. Just leave, please. After a moment's hesitation, Fahad nodded and hurried out the door, casting one last fearful glance at Conti. The cafe was silent. Stefano had reappeared from the kitchen, his face pale as he assessed the situation. Lock the door, Conti instructed him, and take the rest of the night off. Stefano didn't argue. He flipped the sign to closed, locked the door, and disappeared through the back, leaving me alone with Conti and his men. I hugged myself, suddenly cold despite the warmth of the cafe. Thank you, I said quietly, for intervening. Conti studied me, his expression unreadable. You interest me, Maya Nassar. Most people would cower when faced with men like that. You curse them. I shrugged, aiming for nonchalance despite my racing heart. It didn't mean anything, just words. Words have power, he replied, especially when spoken with conviction. He gestured to the chair across from him. Sit. I think we need to talk. It wasn't a request. As I took the seat, I knew with absolute certainty that my life had just taken an irrevocable turn. In trying to escape one dangerous world, I had caught the attention of another. Vincent Conti signaled to one of his men, who produced a phone and stepped away to make a call. Then Conti leaned forward, his eyes never leaving mine. Now, he said, tell me everything. I stared at Vincent Conti across the table, my mind racing for a safe version of everything I could tell him. The cafe felt impossibly small with his presence filling it, the silence broken only by the hum of the refrigerator and the muffled sounds of his bodyguard speaking in hushed Italian on the phone. I don't know what you want me to say, I finally replied, my fingers nervously tracing the wooden grain of the table. Start with why those men were looking for you, Conti said. His voice was surprisingly gentle, but his eyes remained sharp, assessing every micro-expression that crossed my face. I took a deep breath, weighing my options. I could lie, but something told me he would know. Men like him always knew. My family had debts in Lebanon, I began, choosing my words carefully. Before I left, I paid what I thought was everything. Hassan was a loan shark who worked with my uncle. He claims I still owe him money. And do you? I shook my head. No. I settled everything. But men like Hassan, they don't let go easily. If they smell money, they invent reasons to collect it. Conti leaned back, his expression thoughtful. And the boy? Your boyfriend? Cousin's boyfriend, I corrected quickly. Fahad. He's always in trouble, always running from someone. I haven't seen him since I left Beirut 8 months ago. He mentioned your cousin, Zara? My chest tightened at the name. Zara, who had been more like a sister to me. Yes. If Hassan wasn't lying, they're holding her because of Fahad's debts. And you care about her. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. She's family. Conti nodded, as if that explained everything. Perhaps to him it did. I'd heard enough about Italian Mafia families to know they held certain values sacred, Loyalty, blood, family honor. His bodyguard returned, leaning down to whisper something in Conti's ear. He listened, his expression unchanging, then nodded once before the man stepped back to his position. "It seems your friend Hassan has been operating in my city without permission," Conti said, his tone conversational despite the dangerous undercurrent. "Running a loan shark operation, extortion, human trafficking, stealing from me." My blood ran cold at the mention of human trafficking. Was that what they planned for Zara? "I didn't know he was in Boston," I said. "I thought I'd left all that behind. The past has a way of finding us, no matter how far we run." For a moment, something like understanding flickered in his eyes before it was gone, replaced by cool calculation. "Tell me about the curse." The abrupt change of topic caught me off guard. "It's nothing. Just something my grandmother used to say when she was angry. An old woman's curse can be powerful," he said, the corner of his mouth lifting in what might have been amusement, especially when delivered with such conviction. I shifted uncomfortably under his gaze. "You speak Arabic, among other languages, useful in my line of work. And what exactly is your line of work, Mr. Conti?" I regretted the question immediately as his eyes darkened. "I think you know enough about that." He leaned forward, closing the distance between us. "What interests me more is who you are, Maya Nassar. You're not just a cafe worker hiding from debt collectors." I swallowed hard. "I'm nobody." "No," he said with absolute certainty. "You're not." Before I could respond, the cafe's phone rang, shattering the tension. I jumped, but Conti merely gestured for me to answer it. On shaky legs, I walked to the counter and picked up the receiver. "Stefano's Cafe, we're closed." "Maya." Hassan's voice sent ice through my veins. "You have 1 hour to meet us, or your cousin loses a finger. For every hour after that, she loses another." "Where?" I whispered, turning away from Conti, though I knew he could hear every word. "The old warehouse at the harbor. Come alone." The line went dead. I slowly hung up, my hand trembling. "You're not going," Conti stated from behind me. I turned to face him. "I have to. They have Zara. And they'll have you too, if you go." He pulled out his phone, typing something quickly. "My men are already tracking Hassan. We'll find your cousin another way." "Why would you help me?" I asked, genuinely baffled. "You don't know me." He studied me for a long moment. "Let's just say I recognize something in you. Something familiar." The way he said it made my skin prickle, though not unpleasantly. It felt dangerous to be seen so clearly by someone like him. "Besides," he continued, "Hassan crossed into my territory. That can't go unanswered." His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then back at me. "My car is outside. We're leaving." "We? You're coming with me. Until this is resolved, you're under my protection." The word protection sounded like both a promise and a threat. "I can't just—" "You can and you will." His tone brooked no argument. "Unless you'd prefer to meet Hassan alone?" I bit my lip, thinking of Zara, of the terror she must be feeling. "What about my cousin?" "My men will find her." He stepped closer, into my personal space. "Trust me, Maya. This is what I do." Trust him? A Mafia boss I'd met hours ago? But what choice did I have? "I need to get my things from my apartment," I said, relenting. He nodded. "We'll stop there first." Outside, a sleek black SUV waited, engine running. One of his men opened the rear door, and Conti gestured for me to enter. The interior was luxurious, all leather and polished wood, the windows tinted so dark that the outside world appeared only as shadowy shapes. Conti slid in beside me, the scent of his cologne filling the confined space. "Address?" he asked. I gave the driver directions to my small apartment in East Boston. As we pulled away from the cafe, reality began to sink in. I was in a car with Vincent Conti, the most feared man in Boston. I'd become entangled in his world. There would be no going back from this. The ride was silent. Conti typed on his phone, occasionally speaking in rapid Italian to one of his men. I stared out the window, watching my familiar neighborhood transform into the unknown. When we arrived at my building, Conti insisted on accompanying me upstairs, one of his men leading the way, the other following behind. My apartment was on the 3rd floor of a run-down building with unreliable heating and paper-thin walls. I felt a flush of embarrassment as Conti stepped inside, his expensive suit and commanding presence at odds with my modest surroundings. 5 minutes, he said. Pack only what you need. I nodded and moved to my bedroom, a tiny space barely large enough for a bed and dresser. From underneath the mattress, I retrieved my savings, nearly $3,000 in cash, every penny I'd managed to save since arriving in America. I stuffed it into a backpack along with some clothes, my passport, and a small photo album. The only mementos I had of my life before. In the bathroom, I grabbed my toiletries and the bottle of perfume my mother had given me before I left Lebanon. It smelled of jasmine and cedar, scents that reminded me of home. When I returned to the living room, Conti was examining the small collection of books on my shelf, mostly English-language textbooks and a few Arabic poetry volumes. "You're studying," he observed. "I was in university in Beirut," I replied. "Literature. Before everything." He nodded, selecting one of the poetry books and flipping through it. Mahmoud Darwish. Good choice. I stared at him, surprised that he would recognize the Palestinian poet. He caught my expression and almost smiled. "I'm not just what you think I am, Maya." Before I could respond, his phone rang. He answered, listened for a moment, then spoke rapid Italian. His expression darkened. "We need to go," he said, ending the call. "Now." "What's wrong?" "Hassan's men. They've been watching your apartment." My heart raced. "How did they?" "They followed your friend Fahad, most likely." He gestured to his men, who immediately moved into position, one checking the hallway, the other the window. "We need a different exit." "There's a fire escape," I said, moving to the window in my bedroom. "It leads to the alley behind the building." Conti nodded to one of his men, who quickly checked the route, then gave a signal that it was clear. "Stay close to me," Conti ordered, taking my arm. His touch was firm, but not painful, and despite everything, I felt oddly safe with his hand guiding me. We descended the fire escape quietly, the metal creaking slightly beneath our weight. The night air was cool against my skin, carrying the scent of salt from the nearby harbor. When we reached the ground, Conti's grip tightened as he pulled me into the shadows of the alley. "Wait," he whispered, his breath warm against my ear. Footsteps approached from the street. 2 men passed the alley's entrance, their silhouettes visible in the dim light. They carried guns, poorly concealed beneath their jackets. "Hassan's men," I breathed, instinctively pressing closer to Conti. He nodded, one arm wrapping around my waist, holding me against him as we waited for the men to pass. I could feel the steady rhythm of his heartbeat against my back, strong and calm despite the danger. Once the men had moved on, Conti guided me through a maze of back alleys until we reached a different street where another black SUV waited. His men had clearly coordinated the escape route with military precision. As we settled into the vehicle, Conti turned to me. "You're not safe at home anymore. You'll stay at my house until this is resolved." It wasn't a question, or even a suggestion. It was a statement of fact. "And Zara?" I asked, clutching my backpack to my chest like a shield. "My men are closing in on Hassan's location. We'll find her." I nodded, too exhausted to argue. The adrenaline that had carried me through the evening was beginning to wane, leaving me drained and disoriented. We drove through Boston streets, eventually leaving the city behind for the winding roads of the affluent suburbs. I watched as apartment buildings gave way to sprawling estates set back from the road, each more imposing than the last. Finally, we turned onto a private drive, approaching wrought iron gates that opened automatically as our car approached. Beyond them lay a mansion that looked like it belonged in a different century. Stone walls, manicured gardens, and a circular driveway centered around an elaborate fountain. "This is where you live?" I couldn't keep the awe from my voice. "One of my homes," Conti replied, watching my reaction with what seemed like satisfaction. The car stopped at the entrance, and a suited man opened the door. Conti exited first, then extended his hand to help me out. The air here smelled different, cleaner, perfumed with flowers and freshly cut grass. "Welcome to my home, Maya," he said, his hand still holding mine. "For now, it's yours as well." Inside, the mansion was even more impressive. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, priceless art adorning the walls. It was beautiful but cold, like a museum rather than a home. "Alessandro will show you to your room," Conti said, gesturing to an older man in formal attire who had appeared silently at my side. "Get some rest. We'll talk more in the morning." "But Zara is being handled," he assured me. "There's nothing more you can do tonight." I wanted to argue, to demand action, but exhaustion weighed heavily on me. I nodded reluctantly and followed Alessandro up a grand staircase to the second floor. The room he led me to was larger than my entire apartment, with a 4-poster bed, silk curtains, and an adjoining bathroom that gleamed with marble and gold fixtures. "Mr. Conti has instructed that you're to have everything you need," Alessandro said formally. "Ring if you require anything." He indicated a bell pull near the bed. When he left, I stood in the center of the room, feeling smaller than I ever had before. How had my life changed so dramatically in a single evening? This morning, I had been Maya Nassar, refugee, cafe worker, invisible. Now I was, what? A guest? A prisoner? Protected by the very kind of man I'd fled Lebanon to escape. I moved to the window, looking out over the expansive grounds. Security lights illuminated the perimeter, and I could make out the shapes of men patrolling. I was safer here than I'd been in months, yet paradoxically in more danger than ever. From my backpack, I retrieved the small photo album and opened it to a picture of Zara and me, taken at her 20th birthday last year. Her smile was radiant, her eyes dancing with light. My chest ached at the thought of her in Hassan's hands. "I'll find you," I whispered to her image. "I promise." A soft knock at the door startled me. When I opened it, a young woman stood there with a tray. "Mr. Conti thought you might be hungry," she said, entering to place the tray on a small table. It held a steaming bowl of pasta, fresh bread, and a glass of red wine. My stomach growled at the smell, reminding me that I hadn't eaten since my lunch break hours ago. "Thank you," I said. She nodded and left, closing the door quietly behind her. I ate mechanically, barely tasting the food despite its obvious quality. My mind was too full of the day's events, of Hassan's threats, of Zara's peril, of Vincent Conti's intense gaze as he said, "Repeat that," while looking into my eyes. After showering in the luxurious bathroom, I changed into a t-shirt from my backpack and climbed into the massive bed. Despite its comfort, sleep eluded me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Zara's face, or Hassan's cruel smile, or Conti's penetrating stare. Hours later, I was still awake when my door opened silently. I tensed, ready to scream, when Vincent Conti's silhouette appeared in the doorway. "We found her," he said simply. I sat up, my heart pounding. "Zara? Is she alive?" Scared, but unharmed. He stepped into the room, his face half illuminated by the moonlight streaming through the window. "My men are bringing her here now." Relief flooded through me, so intense I felt dizzy with it. "Thank you," I whispered, tears springing to my eyes. "Thank you." Conti moved closer, until he was standing at the foot of my bed. "Don't thank me yet, Maya. This isn't over. Hassan escaped." My relief curdled into renewed fear. "What does that mean?" "It means you and your cousin will remain here, under my protection, until he's found." His voice was soft but unyielding. "It means you're now firmly in my world." The way he said it, my world, sent a shiver of both fear and something else. Something I didn't want to name, down my spine. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, the question that had been burning in me since he first intervened at the cafe. "What do you want from me?" In the half-light, I saw his lips curve into that same not-quite smile. "You intrigue me, Maya Nassar. That's not something that happens often in my life." Before I could respond, he turned to leave. At the doorway, he paused, looking back at me over his shoulder. "Rest. Your cousin will be here by morning." And then he was gone, leaving me with more questions than answers, and the unsettling realization that I was now bound to Vincent Conti in ways I didn't fully understand. Block 3. Sleep eventually claimed me in the early hours of the morning, a restless slumber filled with fragmented dreams of dark alleys and piercing eyes. I woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains and the disorienting sensation of not knowing where I was until memory flooded back. The cafe, Hassan, Conti, Zara. Zara. I bolted upright, remembering Conti's midnight visit. Had they really found her? Was she here? A soft knock at the door answered my question. Before I could respond, it opened, and there she stood, my cousin, pale and thin, dark circles under her eyes, but alive and whole. Maya, she whispered, her voice breaking on my name. I was out of the bed in an instant, wrapping her in my arms, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. She trembled against me, her tears dampening my shoulder. Are you hurt? Did they hurt you? I pulled back, scanning her face, her arms, looking for any sign of injury. She shook her head. No, they scared me, but... She glanced over her shoulder at the open doorway, where one of Conti's men stood watching impassively. His people came, like avenging angels, Maya. One minute I was tied to a chair in some filthy room, and the next... She shuddered at the memory. There was shooting, shouting. Then a man in a suit was untying me, telling me you were waiting. I hugged her again, relief making me weak. I'm so sorry. This is all because of Fahad, because of me. No, she said fiercely, gripping my arms. This is because of Hassan and his greed. She looked around the opulent room, eyes wide. Maya, where are we? Who is this man who helped us? I hesitated, unsure how to explain Vincent Conti to someone who'd grown up, as I had, fearing men of his kind. He's someone powerful. He's protecting us. Zara's expression grew wary. Protecting? Or keeping? The question hit too close to the uncertainty I'd been feeling. Before I could answer, a new voice came from the doorway. Both, for the moment. Vincent Conti stood there, immaculate in another perfectly tailored suit, his presence immediately dominating the room. Zara stiffened beside me, instinctively moving closer to my side. Ms. Nassar, he addressed Zara with a formal nod. I trust you've been made comfortable? Yes, Zara replied cautiously. Thank you for helping me. Maya is important to you. You are important to her. Conti stated this as simple fact. Therefore, your safety is now my concern. The proprietary way he spoke sent a flutter through my stomach, half warning, half something else I didn't want to examine too closely. How long must we stay here? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Until Hassan is found. Conti's eyes met mine, challenging. Unless you're eager to leave my protection? The question hung in the air between us. I thought of my tiny apartment, now compromised, of the cafe, no longer a safe haven, of the life I'd built in Boston, suddenly in shambles. No, I admitted finally. We have nowhere else to go. Something like satisfaction flickered across his face. Then it settled. You'll remain as my guests. He turned to leave, then added, Breakfast is waiting downstairs. Alessandro will show you to the dining room when you're ready. After he left, Zara turned to me with wide eyes. Maya, who is he? Really? I sighed, sitting on the edge of the bed. Vincent Conti. He owns half of Boston's North End. He's... well, they call him the king of the Italian Mafia here. And we're in his house? Under his protection? Zara's voice rose with each question. Have you forgotten what men like him did to our family in Beirut? He's not like the men in Beirut, I said, though I wasn't sure why I felt the need to defend him. He helped us when he had no reason to. Men like him always have reasons, Zara replied darkly. What does he want from you, Maya? I thought of Conti's words. You intrigue me. I don't know, I answered honestly. We dressed in silence, me in clothes from my backpack, Zara in items that had been provided for her, expensive clothes that fit her perfectly, raising questions about how Conti had known her size. Alessandro was waiting outside our door, his expression professionally blank as he led us through the mansion's corridors. I tried to memorize the route, noting exits and windows out of habit, another survival skill I'd developed in Lebanon. The dining room was as grand as the rest of the house, with a table that could seat 20 but was set for only 3. Vincent Conti sat at the head, reading something on a tablet. He stood as we entered, gesturing for us to join him. Did you sleep well? He asked as we took our seats, his question clearly directed at me. Yes, thank you, I lied, avoiding his eyes. I could feel Zara watching our interaction with wary curiosity. Breakfast was served by silent staff. Fresh fruit, pastries, eggs, coffee that tasted better than what we served at the cafe. I ate little, my appetite diminished by tension. Zara did the same, though I noticed her eyeing the food with the longing of someone who hadn't eaten properly in days. "You should eat," Conti said to her, his observation gentle rather than commanding. "Regain your strength." Zara hesitated, then took a pastry, biting into it with cautious pleasure. I felt a strange rush of gratitude toward Conti for his sensitivity. "What happens now?" I asked after several minutes of silence. Conti set down his coffee cup, his expression thoughtful. "Now we wait. My men are hunting Hassan. It's only a matter of time. And then? And then you'll be safe." I frowned. "Just like that? You'll help us and expect nothing in return?" A slow smile spread across his face, making him look younger, almost boyish. I didn't say that. My stomach dropped. "What do you want? For now? Your company." He leaned forward slightly. "You're different, Maya. You have fire in you. I saw it when you cursed Hassan." I felt Zara's questioning gaze but didn't look at her. "I'm nobody special. We both know that's not true." Conti stood, smoothing his suit jacket. "Rest today. Consider yourselves my guests. My home is open to you, though I'd ask that you remain on the grounds, for your safety." With that, he left, leaving us alone in the vast dining room. "What was that about a curse?" Zara asked immediately. I told her about the encounter at the cafe, about the ancient words our grandmother had taught us, words I'd hurled at Hassan in a moment of defiance. "And this Conti, he was impressed by that?" "I think he was surprised," I corrected. "He's probably used to people cowering before him, not fighting back." Zara studied me. "Be careful, Maya. I've seen how he looks at you. It's not like that," I protested, though heat rose to my cheeks. "Isn't it?" Zara's voice was soft with concern. "Just remember who he is, what he is." We spent the day exploring the mansion's permitted areas, always aware of Conti's men watching discreetly from a distance. The house was a testament to wealth and power. Every room perfectly appointed, every surface gleaming. Yet it felt hollow somehow, like a museum rather than a home. In the afternoon, we discovered a library that took my breath away. Floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with books in multiple languages. I ran my fingers along the spines, marveling at first editions and rare volumes I'd only read about in my literature studies. "You appreciate books." I turned to find Vincent Conti watching from the doorway, his expression softer than I'd seen it before. "I was studying literature before." I gestured vaguely, encompassing all that had forced me to flee Lebanon. "Before life intervened," he finished for me, entering the room. "What was your focus?" "Comparative literature, East meets West, breaking down cultural barriers through shared stories." He nodded, approaching a shelf and selecting a volume. The world could use more of that understanding. The comment surprised me. It seemed at odds with what I knew, or thought I knew, about him. "This was my mother's collection," he said, his voice taking on a different quality. "She believed books were windows into other lives, other worlds." "She sounds wise," I replied, watching him carefully. "She was." The past tense hung between us. "She died when I was 15. "I'm sorry." The words felt inadequate. He replaced the book and turned to me, his expression once again unreadable. "Tonight I'm hosting a dinner. Business associates. I'd like you to join us." The request, or was it a command, caught me off guard. "Me? Why?" "Because I ask it." His eyes held mine, a challenge in them. "Wear the dress you'll find in your room." Before I could respond, he was gone, leaving me with the unsettling feeling that I had just been maneuvered into something I didn't fully understand. When I returned to my room, I found Zara already there, staring at 2 garment bags laid across the bed. "He wants us at a dinner tonight," she said, her tone making it clear what she thought of the idea. "With his business associates." I unzipped one of the bags to reveal a deep burgundy dress, elegant and clearly expensive. The other contained a midnight blue gown, equally beautiful. "Why does he want us there?" Zara asked, touching the blue dress with reluctant admiration. I thought of Conti's expression in the library, the way he'd looked at me as if trying to solve a puzzle. "I don't know," I answered truthfully, "but I think he's lonely." Zara looked at me sharply. "Don't start feeling sorry for him, Maya. Men like Vincent Conti don't feel loneliness. They feel ownership, possession." As I held the burgundy dress against me, seeing how perfectly it would fit, I couldn't help but wonder if she was right, and why the thought of being possessed by Vincent Conti sent such a complicated shiver down my spine. The burgundy dress fit as if it had been made for me, the silk caressing my skin as it draped perfectly over my curves. Standing before the mirror, I barely recognized myself. The woman reflected back was elegant, sophisticated, worlds away from the haunted refugee who served coffee in a small cafe. Zara emerged from the bathroom in her midnight blue gown, equally transformed. "How did he know our sizes?" she muttered, smoothing the fabric over her hips. I had been wondering the same thing. "He has resources," I replied vaguely, unsettled by the thought of Conti investigating us so thoroughly. A knock at the door announced Alessandro, who had come to escort us downstairs. "Mr. Conti's guests are arriving," he informed us, his gaze professionally neutral despite our changed appearance. We followed him through the mansion's corridors, the sound of voices and soft music growing louder as we approached the main salon. My stomach churned with anxiety. What kind of business associates would a Mafia boss entertain? What was Conti expecting of us? At the entrance to the salon, Alessandro paused. "Mr. Conti requested that I present you formally," he said, then stepped inside, announcing our presence with a formality that seemed centuries out of place. All conversation halted as we entered. The room was filled with men in expensive suits, a few accompanied by glamorous women draped in jewelry. Every eye turned to assess us, and I fought the urge to shrink back, to make myself invisible as I'd learned to do in Lebanon. Vincent Conti broke away from a group near the fireplace, striding toward us with purposeful grace. He wore a black tuxedo that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders, his dark hair slicked back, making his features appear even sharper. When he reached us, he took my hand, raising it to his lips in an old-world gesture that sent heat racing up my arm. "Maya," he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed meant for my ears alone. "You look ravishing." He turned to Zara, greeting her with a respectful nod but no touch. "Ms. Nassar, thank you for joining us." I noticed the distinction immediately. My first name, Zara's formal address. It confirmed what I'd begun to suspect. His interest was specifically in me, not just in helping two women in trouble. "Allow me to introduce you," Conti said, his hand settling at the small of my back as he guided us into the room. The touch was light, but proprietary, marking me in some way I didn't fully understand. What followed was a blur of names and faces, politicians, businessmen, even a judge, all deferential to Conti, all curious about me. The narrative he presented was carefully crafted. I was a friend from his recent travels in the Middle East. Zara was my cousin visiting from Lebanon. No mention was made of Hassan, of danger, of protection, that felt increasingly like possession. "Vincent never mentioned meeting someone special abroad," one woman commented, her smile sharp beneath her perfectly applied lipstick. She was introduced as the wife of a state senator, but the way she looked at Conti suggested a more personal history. "Some treasures are worth keeping private," Conti replied smoothly, his hand never leaving my back. I didn't correct the implication. Something told me contradicting Vincent Conti in public would be dangerous. Perhaps not to my physical safety, but to whatever delicate balance existed between us. Dinner was served in the formal dining room, the table now fully set for 20 guests. I was seated at Conti's right hand, Zara further down the table between two older men who largely ignored her, a placement I suspected was deliberate. The conversation flowed around me, business deals veiled in euphemisms, political discussions laden with implications of influence. I remained quiet, observing. This was Conti's world, Power exchanged over fine wine and gourmet food, alliances formed and broken with subtle words and meaningful glances. "You're very quiet," Conti murmured to me between courses, his lips close to my ear. "I'm learning," I replied honestly. That earned me a genuine smile, a flash of warmth that transformed his face. "And what have you learned?" I considered carefully before answering. "That power has its own language, that everyone here wants something from you." His eyes darkened with interest. "Including you?" "I only want safety," I said. "For myself and Zara. Is that all?" His gaze dropped briefly to my lips, before returning to my eyes. Heat bloomed in my chest, spreading upward to my face. What else should I want? Instead of answering, he turned to respond to a question from across the table, leaving me flustered and confused by the exchange. After dinner, the party moved back to the salon for drinks. I found myself separated from Conti, cornered by the state senator's wife and two other women whose names I couldn't remember. "So, how exactly did you meet Vincent?" one asked, her tone friendly but her eyes calculating. Before I could construct a suitable lie, a commotion near the entrance drew everyone's attention. One of Conti's men entered hurriedly, whispering something to his boss. Conti's expression darkened. He excused himself from his conversation and crossed to where I stood. "Come with me," he said quietly, taking my elbow. "Now." Without questioning, I followed him from the room, aware of the speculative gazes following our departure. In the hallway, he turned to one of his men. "Find Ms. Nassar's cousin and take her upstairs," he ordered. "Then inform Alessandro to make my excuses to the guests." "What's happening?" I asked once we were alone, hurrying to keep up with his long strides as he led me through the house. "Hassan," he replied grimly. "He's been spotted near the perimeter. My men are handling it, but I want you somewhere secure." Fear gripped me. "And Zara?" "She'll be protected." We descended a staircase I hadn't seen before, leading to what appeared to be a lower level of the mansion. Conti placed his palm against a panel on the wall, and a hidden door swung open, revealing a security room filled with monitors showing various views of the property. Two men sat at the controls, reporting to Conti in rapid Italian. I caught glimpses of the grounds on the screens. Men with guns moving through the darkness, the gates, the surrounding woods. Conti turned to me, his expression grave. "Stay here. Don't leave for any reason until I return for you." "But..." He gripped my shoulders, his eyes intense. "Promise me, Maya." The urgency in his voice silenced my protest. "I promise." With a curt nod, he released me and spoke to the security personnel before departing, the hidden door closing behind him. Left alone with the two security men, who studiously ignored me while monitoring the screens, I paced the small room. On the monitors, I could see Conti emerging from the house, gun in hand, joining his men as they secured the perimeter. My heart raced. Was Hassan really out there? Had he somehow tracked us to Conti's fortress? What would happen if they caught him? Or if he escaped again? Minutes stretched into an hour, tension building with each passing moment. Then, suddenly, there was movement on one of the screens. A figure running through the trees, pursued by Conti's men. Gunshots flashed in the darkness. The security men spoke urgently into their communications devices, tracking the chase. I pressed closer to the monitors, trying to make sense of the chaos unfolding on the screens, and then I saw it. Another figure approaching the house from a different direction, undetected by the security focused on the first intruder. The realization hit me like a physical blow. It was a diversion. "There!" I pointed at the screen. "Someone else is coming from the east side." The security men followed my gesture, cursing as they spotted the second intruder. One immediately radioed the information to the teams outside while the other zoomed in the camera. The figure moved with purpose, clearly familiar with how to avoid detection. As he approached a side entrance, the camera caught his face, and my blood froze. Not Hassan, but Fahad. Zara's boyfriend, the one who had started all this. "That's Fahad," I said urgently. "He's with Hassan. He's the one who brought this danger to us." The security man nodded, relaying the information. On another screen, I could see Conti receiving the message, his face hardening as he changed direction, heading back toward the house, but it was too late. On the monitors, we watched as Fahad somehow bypassed the security system on a side door and slipped inside. "He's in the house," I whispered, horror washing over me. "Zara, she's upstairs." The security man tried to reassure me that Zara was protected, but a terrible suspicion had taken root in my mind. What if Fahad wasn't here to hurt us, but to rescue Zara? What if he convinced her to go with him? I thought of Zara's wariness toward Conti, her distrust of men like him. Would she choose to leave with Fahad, not knowing he was working with Hassan? Without conscious decision, I moved toward the door. "Ms. Nassar," one of the security men called sharply. "Mr. Conti ordered you to stay here." "My cousin is in danger," I replied, my hand on the door panel. "We've alerted security upstairs. They'll protect her." But I couldn't take that chance, not with Zara. "I'm sorry," I said, and before they could stop me, I slipped through the door. I found myself in a dimly lit corridor that I didn't recognize. Relying on instinct, I moved toward what I hoped was the main part of the house, listening for any sound that might guide me. The mansion was eerily quiet, the dinner guests presumably gone. I made my way cautiously upstairs, my silk dress whispering against the marble steps, my heart pounding so loudly I was certain anyone nearby would hear it. As I reached the second floor, I heard voices from the direction of my bedroom. Zara's voice, raised in argument, and a man's voice responding urgently. I moved silently toward the sound, pressing against the wall as I approached the partially open door. Through the gap, I could see Zara, still in her blue gown, facing Fahad, who was gesturing emphatically. "We have to go now," he was saying. "I've created a diversion, but it won't last long." "You're working with Hassan," Zara accused, backing away from him. "Maya told me everything. It's not like that," Fahad insisted. "Hassan forced me to help him find you. But I've turned on him now. This is our chance to escape." I could see Zara wavering, uncertainty crossing her face. "Where would we go?" "I have a place. We'll be safe, I promise." It was the same empty promise he'd made before, the one that had led to Zara's capture. I couldn't let her fall for it again. Taking a deep breath, I pushed open the door. "He's lying, Zara." They both turned, Fahad's expression shifting from surprise to calculation in an instant. "Maya," he said, forcing a smile. "Good, you're here too. We need to leave now, both of you." "No." I stepped into the room, placing myself between him and Zara. "You led Hassan to my apartment. You're the reason Zahra was kidnapped in the first place." Fahad's face darkened. "You don't understand. Hassan will kill me if I don't bring you both back." "So you'd sacrifice us to save yourself?" I asked, disgust evident in my voice. His hand moved to his waistband, revealing the gun tucked there. "I'm not asking." My blood turned to ice as he pointed the weapon at us. "Move. Now, both of you." Zara clutched my arm, her fingers digging into my skin. I could feel her trembling. "Conti's men are everywhere," I said, trying to sound confident. "You'll never make it off the property. That's why I have you," Fahad replied with a cruel smile. "Conti won't risk shooting if you're in the way." As he gestured with the gun for us to move toward the door, I heard a sound behind him, the faintest whisper of movement. Fahad heard it too, starting to turn, but he was too slow. Vincent Conti materialized in the doorway like an avenging shadow, his own gun pressed to the back of Fahad's head. "Drop it," he said, his voice terrifyingly calm, "or die where you stand." Time seemed to freeze in that moment. Fahad with his gun pointed at us, Conti with his weapon pressed against Fahad's skull. Zara and I caught in the middle, the air thick with tension and the promise of violence. "You won't shoot," Fahad said, but the tremor in his voice betrayed his uncertainty. "Not with them in the line of fire." "I never miss," Conti replied, his voice steady and cold. "But if you prefer to test that theory, be my guest." I watched Fahad's eyes dart frantically, calculating his odds. The gun in his hand wavered slightly. "Fahad," I said softly, meeting his gaze. "Don't do this. It's over." Perhaps it was the compassion in my voice, unexpected even to me, that reached him. His shoulders slumped, defeat washing over his features as he slowly lowered the gun. In one swift motion, Conti disarmed him, shoving Fahad face first against the wall. 2 of Conti's men appeared in the doorway, summoned by some silent signal, and took custody of Fahad, binding his hands behind his back. "Take him to the basement," Conti ordered. "I'll deal with him later." As they dragged Fahad away, he twisted his head to look back at Zara, his expression desperate. "Zara, please. I did it for us. Hassan would have killed me." Zara turned away, her face a mask of pain and betrayal. When Fahad was gone, she collapsed onto the bed, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I sat beside her, wrapping an arm around her trembling form. "It's okay," I whispered. "You're safe now." Conti remained in the doorway, watching us with an unreadable expression. The gun had disappeared, tucked away somewhere in his immaculate tuxedo. "Hassan?" I asked, looking up at him. "Dead," Conti replied simply. He made the mistake of pulling a weapon on my men. Relief washed through me, quickly followed by guilt for feeling relieved at a man's death. But Hassan had been a monster, willing to hurt innocent people for money. The world was safer without him. "What about Fahad?" Zara asked, her voice hollow. Conti's expression hardened. "That depends." "On what?" I pressed. "On what you want, Maya." His eyes held mine, intense and searching. "His fate is in your hands." The weight of that responsibility settled heavy on my shoulders.
Fahad had betrayed us, endangered Zara, but he was also a victim of Hassan's threats. And Zara had loved him once. "Don't kill him," I said finally. "But make sure he can never hurt us again." Conti nodded, accepting my decision without question. "He'll be escorted out of the country, back to Lebanon, with a clear understanding of what will happen if he ever returns." Zara looked up, her tear-stained face reflecting a mixture of relief and lingering pain.
"Thank you," she whispered, though whether to me or Conti, I wasn't sure. "You both need rest," Conti said, his tone gentler than I'd ever heard it. "We'll talk in the morning." After he left, Zara and I prepared for bed in silence, the elegant gowns now feeling like costumes from another life. As we lay in the darkness, Zara finally spoke. "I would have gone with him," she admitted, her voice small with shame, "if you hadn't come when you did." "You loved him," I replied, finding her hand in the darkness and squeezing it. "Love makes us vulnerable to the wrong people sometimes." "Like you and Conti?" she asked quietly. The question caught me off guard. "It's not like that," I protested. "Isn't it?" Zara shifted to face me. "I see how you look at each other. There's something there, Maya. Something dangerous." I couldn't deny the strange pull I felt toward Vincent Conti, the way my pulse quickened when he entered a room, the heat that bloomed under his gaze. But was it attraction, fascination, or simply the natural response to power? "He saved us," I said instead of answering directly. "We owe him." "That's what I'm afraid of," Zara whispered. "What price will he ask for our safety?" I had no answer, and soon Zara's breathing deepened into sleep. I lay awake much longer, watching moonlight patterns on the ceiling and wondering the same thing. Morning arrived with a sense of aftermath. The storm had passed, but the landscape had been irrevocably changed. Zara and I dressed in the clothes provided for us, no longer questioning how they came to be in our sizes, and made our way downstairs. Vincent Conti was waiting in his study, seated behind an imposing desk of dark wood. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating him like a Renaissance painting, a modern Medici surrounded by the trappings of power. "Come in," he said, rising as we entered. "Please, sit." We took the chairs opposite his desk, the formality of the setting creating a distance that hadn't existed before. This was Conti the businessman, not the protector from last night. "Hassan is no longer a threat," he began without preamble. "Fahad has been put on a plane to Beirut with clear instructions never to return. Your safety is assured." "Thank you," I said, meaning it despite the complexity of my feelings toward him. "However," he continued, "there is the matter of your future to discuss." My stomach tightened. Here it was, the price Zara had feared. "You can't return to your apartment," Conti said, his tone matter of fact. "Hassan's associates may still be watching it, and the cafe is no longer a safe workplace for you." "Then what do you suggest?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Conti's gaze fixed on me, intense and unwavering. I have a proposition. He turned to Zara first. Ms. Nassar, I understand you were studying medicine in Beirut before circumstances forced you to leave? Zara nodded, surprise evident on her face that he knew this detail. I have connections at Boston University's School of Medicine. A place can be arranged for you to continue your studies, along with secure housing and a stipend for living expenses. Zara's eyes widened. Why would you do that for me? Conti's lips curved in a slight smile. Let's call it an investment in talent. The world needs more dedicated doctors. I studied his face, searching for the hidden agenda, the strings that must be attached to such generosity, but his expression revealed nothing beyond polite interest. And me? I asked finally. What's your proposition for me? Now Conti leaned forward, his eyes never leaving mine. I want you to work for me, Maya. Not quite what I had expected. Doing what, exactly? I have business interests across the Middle East. Legitimate businesses, he emphasized, clearly reading the skepticism on my face. Your language skills, your cultural understanding, they would be valuable, as would your literature background. My literature background? I repeated, confused. I'm establishing a foundation, he explained. Funding educational initiatives, cultural exchanges between East and West, the kind of work you were studying before your life was interrupted. It sounded too perfect, too tailored to my dreams to be coincidence. You investigated me, I said, realization dawning. Before last night, before Hassan even appeared at the cafe. Conti didn't deny it. I notice unusual people, Maya. You caught my attention the first time you served me coffee. A woman with your education and background, hiding in plain sight as a waitress? I was curious. So this whole thing, offering protection, bringing us here, it was all planned? Hassan's appearance was unexpected, he admitted, but I had already decided to approach you with this offer. His arrival merely accelerated my timeline. I didn't know whether to be flattered or disturbed by his interest, his thoroughness. And if I refuse? Then you're free to go, with enough resources to establish yourself safely elsewhere. His tone was casual, but something flashed in his eyes. Disappointment, perhaps. The offer to your cousin stands regardless of your decision. I glanced at Zara, who was watching our exchange with wary fascination. I knew what this opportunity would mean for her. The chance to complete her education, to become the doctor she'd dreamed of being. May I have time to think about it? I asked. Conti nodded. Take the day. We'll talk again this evening. He stood, indicating our meeting was over. In the meantime, feel free to explore the grounds. The danger has passed. Outside in the garden, Zara and I walked in silence for several minutes, absorbing the morning sunlight and the scent of roses. What are you thinking? Zara finally asked. That it seems too good to be true, I replied honestly. Men like Conti don't offer something for nothing. Zara nodded, stopping to examine a blood-red rose. But what is he really asking for? Your skills, or you? The question echoed my own doubts. What did Vincent Conti truly want from me? We spent the day in a strange limbo, enjoying the luxury of Conti's estate while weighing the implications of his offer. He was absent, attending to business elsewhere, which gave me space to think without the distraction of his presence. As evening approached, Alessandro informed me that Mr. Conti wished to see me in the library. Alone. Zara squeezed my hand. Whatever you decide, she said, I'll support you. We'll find a way forward, together or apart. The library was bathed in the golden light of sunset when I entered. Conti stood by the window, his profile outlined against the dying day. He turned at my approach, and something in his expression made my heart beat faster. Have you decided? He asked without preamble. I moved further into the room, running my fingers along the spines of books, anchoring myself in the tactile reality of leather and paper. Before I answer, I need to understand something, I said, finding courage in the familiar surroundings of books. What do you really want from me, Vincent? It was the first time I'd used his first name. It hung in the air between us, intimate and charged. He closed the distance between us with measured steps. I told you before, you intrigue me. You have fire, intelligence, resilience. Those are rare qualities, Maya, valuable ones. In an employee? I challenged, holding my ground as he approached. In anyone. He was close enough now that I could smell his cologne, feel the heat radiating from his body. But especially in someone I might consider more than an employee, there it was, the unspoken current that had been running beneath our interactions from the beginning. I don't want to be owned, I said softly. I left Lebanon to escape men who thought women were property. I don't want to own you, he replied, his voice equally soft. I want to know you. The real Maya Nassar, not the frightened refugee hiding in a cafe, but the woman who curses her enemies and protects her family with a fierceness that rivals my own. His honesty disarmed me. I had expected manipulation, not vulnerability. Your work offer, I said. Is it contingent on personal involvement? Vincent shook his head. The position is yours regardless. Your talents are genuine, your skills valuable to my business. What develops between us personally, if anything, is separate. And Zara's education? Also guaranteed, no matter what you decide. His expression softened. I'm not Hassan, Maya. I don't use people's loved ones as leverage. I believed him, surprising myself with the realization, despite everything I knew about who he was, what he was capable of. I trusted Vincent Conti's word. Then yes, I said finally. I accept your offer. The professional one, I clarified. As for the personal, that remains to be seen. A slow smile spread across his face, transforming his features from intimidating to genuinely handsome. I can be a patient man when the prize is worth waiting for. He reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from my face with unexpected tenderness. I didn't pull away, allowing myself to acknowledge the electricity in that simple touch. I have one condition, I said, finding my voice. Name it. I want to finish my degree, while working for you. Vincent nodded. I expected nothing less. Education was always important in my family. My mother would have insisted on it too. The mention of his mother reminded me of what he'd said about the library being her collection. I glanced around at the thousands of books surrounding us. She must have been remarkable, I said. She was. Something vulnerable flashed across his face. Perhaps someday I'll tell you about her. The promise of someday hung between us, a future stretching beyond the immediate crisis that had brought us together. Vincent extended his hand, formal despite the intimacy of our conversation. So, do we have a deal, Ms. Nassar? I took his hand, feeling the strength in his grip, the warmth of his skin against mine. We have a beginning, Mr. Conti. His fingers tightened slightly around mine. A beginning, he agreed, his eyes holding a promise of both danger and possibility. I like that even better. 6 months later, I stood in that same library, now my favorite room in the house I shared with Vincent. Zara was thriving in medical school, living in a secure apartment near campus, building a new life free from the shadows of our past. As for me, I divided my time between my literature studies at Boston University and my work for the Conti Foundation, using my language skills and cultural knowledge to build bridges between communities that had traditionally viewed each other with suspicion. And Vincent Conti was still the most powerful man in Boston, still feared by his enemies and respected by his allies. But in private moments, when it was just the two of us, he was simply the man who had recognized the fire in me when I was trying my hardest to extinguish it. What are you thinking about? He asked, entering the library to find me gazing out the window at the snow-covered gardens. About curses, I replied with a small smile, and how sometimes they turn out to be blessings in disguise. He crossed to me, drawing me into his arms with the confidence of a man who knew his touch was welcome. I knew from the moment you whispered those words in Arabic that you would change my life. I leaned into his embrace, no longer afraid of the power he wielded, but respectful of it, and of my own power, which had grown under his admiring gaze. Repeat that, I whispered, echoing his words from our first encounter, while looking into my eyes. Vincent laughed, the sound warm and real, before tilting my face up to meet his gaze. You changed everything, Maya Nassar. And I wouldn't have it any other way. As his lips met mine, I knew that some dangers were worth facing head-on, especially those that carried the promise of a love powerful enough to transform even the darkest circumstances into something unexpectedly beautiful.